Hi everyone, welcome to Christ Community Church. My name is Sarah and I'm a student here in the middle school ministry. We are so glad you're here today. This Sunday is a little different than normal. We, the students, have taken over. We are so thankful this church values students and wants to see us involved in every area of the church. Let me tell you a few things coming up in student ministry. Coming up in the middle school ministry is Freeze Your Face Off. Join us this February 2nd as we go to Mount Crescent for a night of fun in the snow. This event costs $20. Be sure to bring a friend because any non-CCC friends get 50% off. Register online by January 27th. We have 3 high school events I'd like to tell you about. First, Super Bowl Sunday is coming quick and each grade-specific team has a party plan for that day. Be sure to check online or with the high school ministry staff to get details for your team. Second, our annual Couch-A-Rama is coming up on March 3rd. High school journey groups will compete against one another in an epic couch-related scavenger hunt that you will not want to miss. And lastly, Life Conference. This event is so huge that it only happens once every 3 years. This July, thousands of students will head to Orlando, Florida for a week of fun and spiritual growth. There are still a few more spots. Sign up today. We've got a great service planned for you, and we will get started here in just a few moments. All of this information and more can be found online at cccomaha.org.
Community Church, welcome to Student Takeover. Let's worship together in spirit and truth. Come let us worship our King. Come let us bow at His feet. He has done great things. See what our Savior has done. See how His love overcomes. He has done great things. Oh, He has done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. When you dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, I'm saved. Your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. Here we go. Been faithful through every storm. You'll be faithful forevermore. You have done great things, and I know you will do it again. For your promise is yes and amen. You will do great things. God, you do great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive.
Give it up. That's awesome. Well, hey, good morning, Christ Community Church. We're so glad you're able to make it here today on this beautiful, cold, snowy morning. I don't know if you know who I am, but if you don't, my name is Seth, and I'm a high school ministry resident right here at CCC. And I also don't know if you noticed all the red shirts around today, but those are all students or somebody who serves in student ministry in some way, shape, or form. And we are here to serve you today because today is Student Takeover. And that's a pretty cool thing because we want you to see what student ministry is really all about. And we love to have fun. We love to play games. We love to build relationships. But most importantly, we want to keep the focus on Jesus. And one of the ways we do that is just to have fun. And so we thought it'd be a cool experience if you guys were able to see into student ministry a little bit. So we're going to play a game, and it's called The Impossible Shot. So 2 lucky people in the audience today are going to get to do this. And here's how it works. Every week, we choose 1 or 2 people to come and be a part of this game. And what we do is we give them a bow and arrow. Don't worry, we dull the tips so nobody loses an eye. I'm just kidding. No, they're foam. They won't hurt anybody. But we give them a bow and arrow, and what we do is we tell them, okay, pull it back and hit the target. So to my left, you'll see an orange target, and to my right, you'll see a blue target. And so every week, a student or 2 gets the chance to do the impossible shot. And so they get 2 shots, and if they hit the target, they win the grand prize. But each week, we do this. If a student misses, the prize goes up in value. So before the last person won, it was worth more than $200. We're not playing for that prize today. We're gonna play for a $25 Starbucks gift card. But before we do that, I need to figure out where my contestants are at. So I have strategically placed 2 orange CCC stickers on the front of your chair. So if you would just check around the chairs and see if you have a CCC logo that looks like this, I need you to jump up and down, go crazy, yell out your name or something so I know where you are at. Everybody's standing. I don't know who's, well, make some noise. Oh, right here. All right, what's your name, miss? Aubrey, how old are you? 4. She's 4 years old. All right, and who else do we have? I see an arrow over here. Who do we have up here? What's your name? Yell it out. Riley. All right, so we have Aubrey and Riley. Here's what's going to happen. Aubrey is going to get the chance to take a shot at the orange target, maybe with a little help from dad or mom. And just be aware, they're going to take a shot at the orange target, and Riley up there is going to get to take a shot at the blue target. So if you're over in these side areas over here, be aware you will have flying darts headed towards your head. So just be aware of that. Keep it cool. Heads up. We don't want anybody getting shot. It only hurts for a day or 2 if you get hit. I'm totally kidding. But let's do this. So Aubrey, I need to get these guys ready to go. Maybe we'll start up here with Riley. We're going to alternate turns. So Riley, whenever you're ready, I would love for you to take a shot at the blue target. And audience, if I can get your participation in this, maybe we count down from 3, and on 1 they take a shot. All right, you ready? All right, audience, count down with me. 3, 2, 1. Oh, so close. Did they hit it? No, so close. All right. Aubrey, 3, 2, 1. Oh, all right. Back to you, Riley. All right, you ready? Audience, I need your participation one more time. 3, 2, 1. Oh, the power. Aubrey, this is your shot. You got this. I know you can do it. All right, audience, last time. 3, 2, 1. Oh, she got it. Did she hit it? No? Oh, so close. All right. Well, hey, can we give our contestants a round of applause? Thank you guys so much. That was awesome. That's a little bit in what we do in student ministry. We love to have fun, but keep the focus on Jesus. Well, hey, at this time, I'm going to throw it back to the worship team. So if you would, please stand and continue to worship Jesus with us today.
declare this together right now. You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down. Come on. You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down.
God, you are so, so good. You're never going to let us down. We thank you and we love you so much. Amen.
Everyone, in honor of Super Bowl Sunday next week, I thought we should break it down like Danny Woodhead after he scores a touchdown. Let's play some Madden.
I'm down, let's do it. I love that, dude.
Who is Danny Woodhead?
Are you serious? The dude's a legend. He played for the Patriots and is from Nebraska.
He was also running back for the Chargers.
Isn't that the same guy who's going to be sharing his story at our church next week? We should bring all our friends along to hear it.
I know some people who would totally come to church to meet an NFL star.
Hey, you know what else would be super fun? We should get everyone to wear our NFL merch to church.
Yeah, that'd
That'd
be
be so cool.
Yeah, that'd be
Dude,
like
that is
totally
awesome.
Who's your favorite team?
ABTP, baby.
Huh? What does that mean?
Anybody but the Patriots. Yeet!
You just got
Aw, yeah. Go Cowboys. Come on, Prescott.
Dude, pass me the ball. I was wide open.
What are you talking about? You were triple
Yeah,
covered.
but you could have passed it to me and I could have made my way down the field.
Just because you have his jersey, it doesn't make you play like Odell Beckham.
At least you guys have an NFL jersey.
Hey guys, I'm sorry, but I gotta hop off for tonight. I've got a ton of homework. See you next week for Super Bowl Sunday. Remember, bring your friends to hear Danny Woodhead share his story and make sure to wear all the NFL gear you have.
Hey, in case you guys missed that info from the video, next week is Super Bowl Sunday, and we're going to have the one and only Danny Woodhead here to share his story of faith. It's going to be a great opportunity for you guys to invite some friends and hear a great story from a great guy.
Yeah, definitely. And don't forget to wear your favorite team merch to church next week. Anyways, my name is Reagan and this is Josh, and we're part of the high school student ministry. If you want to know more about our ministry, we do have a booth out in the atrium, and we have candy, so make sure to check it out.
Hey, whether this is your first time here or you've been here forever, we want to say we're so glad you're here. If you haven't gotten connected yet, we want to invite you to check out the Next Steps booth out in the atrium.
Yeah, the Next Steps booth is where you can find Start, Connect, and Serve. You can take a tour of our campus, and you can also get connected in smaller community groups.
Well, maybe you're already in a small group and have known Jesus for a long time, but haven't been baptized yet. Baptisms are coming up on February 10th and March 10th. Baptism is a public declaration of someone's dedication to follow Christ for the rest of their life. If this sounds like you and you want some more information, go check out the Next Steps booth in the atrium.
Yeah, and speaking of obedience, offering is a part of worship and it's used to advance the kingdom of God. If you're new here to CCC, we don't want to pressure you to give it all, but if you call CCC your church home and you want to give a gift, there are black boxes by the doors, and when you exit, you can just drop off your gift there. Or if you're tech savvy like Justin Timberlake, you can give online.
Well, hey, sometimes at CCC, we like to have some special guests. If you don't know who this gentleman coming on stage here is, he's part of a family living in Peru and a longtime CCC missionary, Alan George. Now, Alan, who is this you have on stage with you?
Yeah, well, as many of you know, in 2016, my first wife, Amy, passed away after a valiant 12-year battle with a brain tumor. And about a little over a year ago, Mary Beth and I got married. Mary Beth is from... Mary Beth is from Manitoba, Canada, and the Canucks. And she has been in Peru working with SIM Peru, the same mission organization that we're with, since 2005. She has a theater ministry along with camping ministries, and right now is in planning stage with Eva Brandt to bring a group from CCC down to do a theater project in June or July.
That's awesome. So I have a question for you, Mary Beth. How are the students in Peru, like students here, how are they involved with church life?
Well, one thing that has impressed me this morning is to see all the creativity and enthusiasm of the students as they have been leading the service. And that's something that students in Peru also bring to the churches, that enthusiasm, that creativity, that eagerness to learn. And really, they're kind of the life of the party at the church. And so some of the things that they do there are, they do skits and dramas for special occasions like Easter and Mother's Day and Christmas and things like that. They often do the decorations, which is a really nice time of fellowship for them during the week. They get to kind of do their cutting and pasting and hang out and talk and grow in their faith by just interacting with each other. And they lead Sunday school as well and get involved where they can.
Well, I'm sure there's a bunch of people who want to meet you guys for the first time and say hello. How can they do that?
Well, after this service, until about 2 o'clock, we will be available. We're going to have a kind of a meet and greet in the D126 room. I'm going to date myself when I say this, but that's the accordion door rooms over there. Now, I don't even know how you'd open those doors. They look like a battleship to get through. But we'll be there, and we can tell you more about our ministries until about 2 o'clock. So please come over and say hi.
That's awesome. Well, I think I speak for all of us here at CCC. We just want to give you a huge thanks for all your time and commitment to your calling to Jesus. So let's all give them a huge round of applause.
Well, here in a couple minutes, we're going to hear a great message from our high school pastor, Brad Mock, and a high school student, Silas Perry. But first, we want to share a cool story that's been happening in the student ministry for the past couple of years. Take a look.
My name is Ryan Adkins. I'm a junior at Westside, and I play basketball and baseball.
I'm Randy Adkins. I'm a college professor at UNO. We've been going to Christ Community here, my wife, my two sons, for about as long as the kids remember, but essentially since Mark became pastor here about 11 years ago. I grew up in the church, and I wanted to be very intentional about bringing them to church because, you know, one of the things I know is that what you learn first lasts the longest. And I think it's really important that they be introduced to God and be introduced to their faith very early so they could learn it, and then they could also take that with them throughout their life. When Ross was 3 years old playing t-ball, I let somebody else coach him, and then I realized pretty quickly, I know as much, if not more, than that guy knows. And I know that we're supposed to go get ice cream after this is over. So we're going to make sure that we do this, do it right, and that we have fun while we do it.
I think my dad wanted to be closer to me and to have a positive impact in my life and to share like moments of happiness and sadness and to be able to teach me lessons through sports and through other things.
I didn't want to be part of the youth ministry because I wanted my boys to experience Christ through other men besides me. And so I'm just really pleased that we have so many men of God here at church who are willing to do that with our kids.
So in 8th grade, my journey group leader asked our group to bring our dads and us over to his house for some lunch and some games and to learn more about our dads.
I remember walking in with Ryan and I thought, I have no idea what I'm walking into.
So one of the first things we did was introduce our dads, and the way I introduced him, I think I did a pretty good job of telling his life story and what he had done in his life, but I didn't really explain why the decisions were made. I just told about them. And then we went and we had about an hour and a half of time alone to talk spiritually.
It was interesting because, at that age, I had not thought about talking to Ryan about some of the things that had happened in my life and why I had made some of the decisions that I made. And I just thought of him as being a young kid who probably wasn't ready for that kind of thing. I mean, these looked to me like being more adult-like questions. But what I was really surprised about was not only was he interested to hear it, but he was engaged by it.
Like I wasn't reading questions out of the book. I was more like asking questions that I'd had my whole life that he was able to answer.
That really surprised me because I guess as a parent, what you know is what your parents taught you and what your experience was with them, unless, somebody else teaches you something. And, I learned something from Dustin that day, Ryan's journey group leader, because my son was ready to have conversations like this, and I wasn't aware that he was.
So we came back and we reintroduced our dad.
The second time when he reintroduced me, it was drastically different. He had, I think, a little different view of me that he probably hadn't had before we walked into his journey group leader's house that day.
I just sort of see him more as my dad because I know more about him now. And it was like he's more of a friend to me and somebody that I can trust in with my spiritual problems.
I think now I'm able to ask him questions that are a little bit deeper, and he's able to trust me. And part of that trust is because he knows me a little better. He's still like any other teenager. He spends way too much time looking at his phone. But he does come and sit down with me sometimes at night and just say, hey, how was your day? And what's going on with you?
Being able to have a time to ask your parents questions on a deeper level and to learn more about them really brings your relationship a lot closer. Because no matter what you do, they're always going to be there for you.
The thing I think I would say about being intentional with your kids is that it's hard. I mean, it's really hard. These kids have busy schedules. You may have more than one child. You've got work. You've got church activities. And you got to find a time when you can spend quality time with your kid talking about these kinds of questions. It's not easy to balance those things. So I just think you have to make an effort to try to balance them. And I think that's important that the kids see you do that.
Well, hey, Merry Christmas. Yeah, you're like, why is this dude wishing us Merry Christmas? Well, because if you've been reading along with us in the story, you would know that finally here on January 27th, we're to the part of the story where Jesus is born and the part of where he's growing up as a young boy. This is the most exciting and important event of the story, what the whole thing has been leading us up towards, this very moment where the coming of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, finally happens. And our theme for this morning, yeah, you can cheer for that. That's exciting stuff. And yeah. Our theme out of this chapter this morning is intentionally discipling others. That each of us, whether we're 8 years old or 98 years old, are pouring our faith into other people around us, discipling them, teaching them the lessons that we've learned in our faith so that we can continue to pass our faith on. You just saw it done so well in that video with Ryan and Randy and the journey group that Ryan was a part of. Just to give you an example, we're going to give you plenty more of examples throughout the morning. And what we're going to do as we zoom in on this chapter is focus mostly on this story we find of Jesus as a boy. He's 12 years old, and you're going to read about what seems like at first glance maybe the worst parenting move in all of human history. but you're also going to see some amazing parenting from Mary and Joseph throughout this chapter. And I've got a friend of mine from our student ministry who's here to help us. He's a junior. He loves playing Fortnite and drinking Mountain Dew till 4 in the morning. He does a spot-on British accent, and he's just a dude who loves Jesus. He goes to Central High School where he's real involved, and is just smart academically, and a dude who's following Christ there. And he's also a leader in our student ministry. So let's welcome up Silas Perry, who's here with us today.
Yeah, hello, good morning. Good morning. Let me just say that I'm super excited to be taking over the church with my peers today. It's awesome. I love this every year. And this year I knew it was coming around, so I blackmailed Brad into letting me preach with him today. I said if he didn't let me, I would tell everyone that he stays up till 4 a.m. as well, but instead of playing Fortnite, he works on his British accent while drinking tea. No, that didn't happen. You're not going to get a message from someone who's committed blackmail to the other pastor. Don't worry. Anyway, a little about myself. I'm 17. I go to Central High School. I am really passionate about science and engineering, and my biggest goal in life is to have a better British accent than Brad. So let's get going. Are you guys ready? We good? All right. Okay. So I have no doubt that you've all been keeping up in this story, right? So you know that chapter 22 is all about a giant transition in this pre-Jesus world to a post-Jesus world, as far as him coming down to earth. And as we dig deeper into this chapter, there are some really important ideas I don't want us to miss before we head into our main focus. So idea number one that we have to catch here. So the Christmas story, right? This chapter, it's all about an opportunity for us to just look at the Christmas story without all the crazy holiday stuff of seeing extended family, planning trips, having to pretend that we like Grandpa's Christmas bean casserole. Whatever it is, we can just take a step away from all the holiday craziness, right? And we can just focus on how beautiful this moment in the Bible really is. Now, God, he's been leading the Israelites for thousands of years through times of hardships, like when they were enslaved in Egypt, through times of victory, when the walls of Jericho came crumbling down. And throughout all this, there's been this prophecy that the Israelites are holding on to about a Messiah coming down to earth. And in fact, the first mention in the Bible of a Messiah is actually right off the bat in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. It reads this: "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel." Now, Jesus is the he who's being referred to in this passage, and the action taking place is Jesus coming to earth and killing Satan, or crushing his head. And now, in chapter 22 of the story, thousands of years later, Jesus is actually on the scene. The baby Jesus is here, and the head crusher has arrived. But he won't crush your head, so don't worry, just Satan's. So you see how exciting this really is, because Jesus is the fulfillment of God's promise of a Messiah to all of humanity, not just the Israelites, but to everyone forever and ever, and that is worth excitement. Amen? Okay. Secondly, second thing I don't want us to miss before we get into the main focus here. There's a theme of trust and obedience to God that's really inspiring that Mary and Joseph display in this chapter. So there are multiple points, as you might expect, that Mary and Joseph that they experienced doubt. For example, Mary was a little bit troubled about the words of Gabriel, and Joseph, he didn't quite know what to do when his wife got pregnant. But through that, they obeyed God, and they trusted in God, and because of this, they were able to raise up the Messiah. Now, I think there's a lesson to be learned here for parents, and really for all of us, that no matter what obstacles show up, like a broken arm or a receding hairline, that or maybe it's King Herod chasing down your son trying to kill him. Whatever it is, that God is going to be there right with you in the midst of it all, and he is going to make sure you don't sink, and he will get through it with you.
You think it's okay to kick students out of the youth group at all? I don't know if that's possible. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into our main passage here for this morning. Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 41. It's this story of Jesus as a boy again growing up. And as we go through this passage, we want you to look for, where do we see discipleship happening? Where do we see, especially Jesus' parents, intentionally pouring their faith into him and into their family, all right? And these verses here start out by talking about a family faith tradition that Jesus' family has. Again, verse 41, it says this. Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the Passover according to the custom. So the Passover, it's this religious festival that Jewish people celebrated. They still celebrate today. It's the remembrance of when God freed his people from slavery in Egypt. And so being faithful followers of God, Jesus' parents would observe the Passover by going into Jerusalem and celebrating it as a family. And it says they took Jesus there how often? Every year. What you see is parents who take their faith development and the faith development of their family very seriously. Now, I wonder, do you think Jesus' family was ever tempted to not go into Jerusalem for the Passover ceremony? You think there were years where Joseph said, wow, the carpentry business, I'm just so swamped. I'm back ordered for months with wall-mounted singing bass fish. You think there were years where Mary said, man, it's been a long time since I've re-leathered the kids' sandals. Maybe we shouldn't go on the trip this year. Do you think there were times where James had his select chariot team competition in another city at the same weekend and they were trying to decide where they should go, Passover or the chariot races? Wall-mounted fish, re-leathering sandals, select team sports. These things aren't bad in and of themselves, but there's this trend, right, in Christianity where we've so devalued participating in faith practices. We've so devalued coming to church and worshiping together and serving together and things like that, that if we just took a step back and realized how sometimes what little attention we're giving to our faith development and the faith development of our families, wow, we're missing out on some spiritual growth opportunities for sure. Now, would Jesus' parents still have had a faith in God if they would have gone to the Passover every so often, maybe every other year or so? Well, sure, they still would have had a faith in God. But when I read the words every year, I see a family who says, we're going to make faith development in our family the number one priority in our family. And so they began to build their lives around that, and they went to the Passover festival every year because that was what was most important to them, was their faith development. Verse 42, we learn at this point that Jesus, again, is how old? 12 years old, yeah. And it doesn't seem like Joseph and Mary's mentality was, oh, he's just 12 years old. We're going to wait for a little while to invest in him spiritually. You know, it used to be in America that adolescence ended around what age? Back in the day, we said that. What year were they kind of adults now? 18 years old, okay, right? And have you guys seen that change over the last little bit of time to where adolescence has grown and grown and grown? And I think along with that, we've lost the intentionality and the urgency of saying, man, it's really important that right now we build into this next generation, this urgency to pass our faith on to them, this urgency to get back to the intentionality that Jesus' parents had with him and how they brought him up. So how do we do that? I want to give you a few practical tips, both as parents and grandparents, and maybe the average church person. How do we intentionally invest in the next generation? Let's start with parents and grandparents, you first. The number one tip I can give you is to model faith in Jesus by how you live your life. That's the most important thing you do, is just model it by how you live your life. Do your kids see you getting up and spending time with God in his word and in prayer? Do they see you, dad, being angry less and patient more often? Do they see you, mom, loving your neighbors more regularly? Do they see both of you, when you mess up, because we all mess up, humbly asking for forgiveness and demonstrating what it means to be a good Christian in that kind of a way, modeling it? And then the second thing that we can do is talk about it, talk about our faith in Jesus. From a very young age all the way up through, even as they're teenagers. I know so many parents of teenagers feel like, my kid doesn't listen to me anymore. Every study I've ever seen on this shows that by far, parents are the number one influence, even in a teenager's life. And so how are you talking about the things that God has done in your life, the times that he's been with you in the tough times and the great times of life, and sharing the stories and passing them on to your kids? So you model it and you talk about it with your kids. How about for those of you who maybe don't have kids in the house? How can you be intentional about passing your faith on to the next generation through our church here? A couple tips for you. One is to get to know a student that you interact with. Maybe there's a student who you sit next to on a regular basis in a service that you feel, I could get to know them a little better. Or maybe you serve somewhere at Christ Community Church with a student and you want to be more intentional about your relationship with them. If you don't know a student here in our church, I want to challenge you, get to know a student. Now, I know that students are a little bit intimidating, aren't they? They're a little scary. Students, I don't know if you know, adults think that about you sometimes, but we have so many great students here that would love to get to know you and just build a relationship with you. And then secondly, once you get to know them, be intentional about passing your faith on to them. Maybe teach them an instrument. Teach them 1960s slang words that were cool back in the day, like bug out and what's your bag, man? I had to research those. Apparently those were phrases back in the day. Anybody here want to admit that they used those at one point in their life? Nobody. Okay, all right. Just a cool example, 2 weeks ago, Dr. Schlichtermeyer, he goes to our church. He's in the choir along with his wife, but he saw my family in the atrium, and he'd never really met my kids before. He knew me some, and so he comes up, and he takes the time and gives my kids the dignity of getting to know their names, and he's telling them funny stories, making them laugh, and he's passing on wisdom about how to be smart financially, and he's telling them how if they don't work hard at school now, that they're going to be riding a bike in college when they're 21 years instead of driving a car around campus. And it was funny, and it was great advice, and what it was discipleship. And it was just in a real normal interaction out in the atrium, passing on faith in small ways to the next generation. And so parent, grandparent, church, what do you have? Whatever it is, pass it on to the next generation. I've given you a couple of ideas of what it looks like to pass it on. Silas, can you just share some ideas, some ways that people in your life have passed it on to you, man?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been discipled too by a number of adults, and excuse me, I'm just going to go down the list here. First one, Darren and Riley are my two journey group leaders right now. I love you guys. I know Darren's over there. Anyway, we sit down from time to time over some chicken or coffee, but not at the same time because that's weird. We just talk about like how I'm growing in my faith and how I'm doing in life and school. Another thing at Fall Retreat a couple months ago, the speaker said something that really changed me. He said that that God has chosen me before anyone else could reject me. And I think that's a really cool thing. Also, another thing, Mr. Ashton was preaching a couple of years ago. One thing I remember from that, he challenged the church to just think if you're still promised to get into heaven with all of its glory and all of its splendor, but you took God out of the equation, would you care about that? And that scared me at the time to ask myself that question. But as I asked myself that, it helped me seek a more than surface level faith about Christianity. Being able to watch my dad fill out dozens and dozens of journals over the years, and my mom doing a lot of quiet times has helped me to do the same as them. My siblings taught me how to work hard and take joy in being a nerd. And one thing I've always loved that my parents told me is that I could do anything with my life that I'm passionate about, and that God's going to meet me there and change people through me. So that being said, let's continue on with the passage, verses 43 through 44. It reads this. After the festival was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled on for a day. Then they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. So we've established that the Israelites had a tradition of annually going to Jerusalem, right? And now verses 43 through 44 bring us to, as Brad was saying, the biggest parenting failure of all time. At least that's how it looks at first. I mean, can you just imagine this, right? You're in the Bahamas taking a vacation, you fly home, you get to Omaha, and then you realize that something isn't here, right? Or someone isn't here in this situation. Except instead of it being Jimmy, it's the Messiah. Mary and Joseph lost Jesus Christ. They lost him. Now, I think it's a little bit comical if you imagine, how this would have gone down. Obviously, if you're a parent and you lose your child, the first thing you do, pray, right? You pray. So imagine Mary and Joseph, they lost Jesus, and then they stop and they start to pray. God, you know that little miracle baby you gave us? Yeah. You happen to know his tracking password for his cell phone? Oh, cell phones haven't been invented. You think James is here? You think you could just shoot that power over to James? Because, we'll find him. It seems silly, right? But if you dive into this little, it's not as big of a mistake as you would have thought. Because family back then, in Jesus' time, didn't mean the same thing it does today. On your streets, you're a family, and you probably live in a house, which is next to another house, and you all have 3 to 5, 10 if you're insane people in that house, right? and it's very segregated. But back in Jesus' times, families were more inclusive and much more of like a community. And Mary and Joseph didn't notice Jesus was gone because they traveled in such a tight-knit group that they just assumed he was with someone else. And this greatly affected how the young people were raised up. In Deuteronomy 6, we see God describing how the next generation should be brought up in the church. And it looks a lot more like a communal effort put forth by multiple families, mentors, and friends, rather than just immediate family members trying to teach that child everything there is to know about Christianity, which is a daunting task for a single person. And because of this, because the responsibility is a lot more evenly distributed, it's easier to raise that generation the way God intended. So there are two major takeaways here that I want us to get. One of them, as a society, and especially as Christians, we need to start moving back to how families operated before instead of how segregated they are in modern times. And instead of like immediate family members solely raising a child, the whole community needs to be a part of raising that child. And that's what the church is a part, that's a part of why the church is here, is to help raise up the next generation. So I would encourage all the adults in the room, regardless of if you have a kid of your own or not, to make an intentional effort to pour into the life of a child. And in student ministry, we talk about a 5-to-1 ratio, where you have 5 adults pouring out spiritual nurturing into one kid. So if you're an adult in the room who's already nurturing a child, I'd try and bring 3 or 4 more adults into that circle. Second takeaway, teenagers are not completely irresponsible and untrustworthy. Mary and Joseph trusted Jesus enough not to worry when they thought he was missing for a day. They didn't think about it for a whole day because they trusted Jesus, right? And when adults don't show any trust to the coming generation, it's expressing an attitude of mistrust, and that can be mistaken by that generation as parents saying you are inherently irresponsible solely based on the fact that you're young. And I don't think that's a healthy idea for parents to impress upon their children.
That's good stuff. I think that our students today are showing that we can entrust a lot to them and they can do well with that. In fact, Silas is doing so good, I'm worried that me and Mark are going to be out of a job pretty soon, all right? But let's continue rolling on here in verse 45. It says, when they didn't find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him, and after 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Verse 47, everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you. Just like teenagers, right? When you really need to get a hold of them, their cell phone battery is dead for 3 days in a row here, Jesus, all right? But they find him in the temple courts, and he's sitting, he's listening, he's asking questions, and everyone who saw him was amazed at his understanding and answers, it says. I don't know when you read that if you're like, well, of course they were amazed at him. He was Jesus. He was the Son of God. Of course he knew all that stuff. Of course he had great answers. Jesus, God's Son. The Bible tells us that when he came to earth, he was both 100% at the same time. He was 100% fully God and 100% fully human. And to be able to do that, Jesus had to leave behind some of the characteristics of what it meant to be God. Can you think of any of the characteristics that Jesus left behind for those temporary years where he was here on earth? Yeah, a few that come to my mind are this, omnipresence. Jesus was no longer present everywhere, right? He was only present one place at a time where his physical human body could take him. How about omnipotence? He didn't have the full power of God to be able to just do everything he wanted to every time. And then omniscience. He wasn't all-knowing when he was here on earth. And I love this because I think the temptation is to look at Jesus and go, wow, the things I see him doing in the New Testament, in the Gospels, I look at that and I go, well, that's great for him because he was God, but I can't do those things. But it wasn't through the fact that he was God that Jesus was living a sinless life and healing people and starting this world-changing discipleship moment that he was starting while he was on earth. He did those things how then? He did those things through a deep connection with his Father and through the indwelling power and presence of the Holy Spirit living in him and working through him. When Jesus left earth, he said, you who know Jesus Christ as your personal Savior are going to do even greater things than him. What did Jesus mean when he said that? He meant that he was leaving so that the Spirit could rest on all of us who are followers of Jesus Christ, so that in whole, the numbers, just the sheer number of us living through the indwelling power of the Spirit and deep connection to the Father are going to do even more than Jesus could do when he was just here by himself on earth. Because when Jesus was here, he was limited, he was human. And when he was here, he had to grow and learn and ask questions and grow in wisdom and stature, the Bible tells us. I think the reason why Jesus was astonishing so many people was not because he was God and he was born with all this knowledge. It's because he was born into this family where faith development was a priority, and so they poured into Jesus, and the community around him poured into him, and that got him to where he was. And I love it because it means that we as a church, it means that we as families can also pour into our kids, and they can do amazing things for God in the same way.
All right, awesome. You guys with us? Okay, let's continue on. Luke 2, verse 49 through 50. And this is where I think things are getting really interesting. So Mary says to Jesus, right, "Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." Where is he, right? And this is Jesus' reply. "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. Don't you know I had to be in my father's house?" But they did not understand what he was saying to them. I think this verse should inspire an immediate question in all of us. Why did Jesus act so surprised that his parents didn't know where he was? There are a couple important ideas that surface as we answer this. And obviously, Jesus wasn't purposely trying to make his mom and dad worry about him, right? He didn't watch them and laugh from a hiding place as Mary and Joseph left Jerusalem. But no, Jesus acted surprised to highlight how important the relationship between us and God really is. It was of such importance to Jesus. He wanted it so badly that to be in communion with God, to be in his Father's house, that all other obligations became secondhand to him. And it's not that Jesus didn't care about Mary and Joseph's feelings, but the necessity of being with his Father was so great that it trumped the need for his parents to know where he was. And there's an really important lesson here. Parenting often puts an enormous amount of pressure on a bunch of earthly goals for our children, like jobs, education, sports, and health, right? And those are all good goals, and they should be stressed to some extent, but it's not good when they're put above nurturing a child's faith. Nurturing a child's faith should come first, right? So you see, just as Jesus saw that his communionship with the Father is more important than that earthly worry about where he was exactly, parents should have that same sense where their obligation to nurture their child's growth is more important than those earthly concerns. But there's also another side to this, right? Because it's not just the parent, it's the kid as well. So as teenagers and children, it's our responsibility to recognize that our immediate wants and desires may not always go parallel with our parents' wishes. I can attest to that. And when our parents are trying to provide an environment where we as adolescents can grow in our faith, I hate to say this, but it's not a bad thing to let your parents win an argument every now and then, maybe. I know I can take a lesson from that. But before we continue, I have 2 challenges for you parents. Are there any parents in the room? Raise your hands. Me too. No, just kidding. Don't worry, Mom. Don't worry. Let me ask you this. All you parents, do you know this? Do you know that your child is a gift from God? And I mean it. I'm sure in the years of raising Jesus, Mary and Joseph fell into the day-to-day monotony, right? Get Jesus in the shower, get him dressed. They might have forgotten just how important he was, how much of a gift he was from God. And I think that some of the parents here and around the world today are forgetting how much of a gift a child is. And it's often only in those moments of, oh, wow, I don't know where my kid is right now, that parents realize how valuable that their children really are. So here's my first challenge. I want you parents to make it a priority, really drive for this, that to make it a goal that your kids know that they are a gift from God. And this may look like a text or a spoken word or yell out the door, but every morning I want you guys to tell your kids, you are a gift from God. I think that would change their lives, and it would change your lives, and it would change your relationship with them. Challenge 2. I want you to ask yourself this question. If I were to die today, would my kids be left feeling like I doubted them or I trusted in them? Parents, I can't stress enough how important it is for you to be on mission to your children. And I think you all know that, but the mission I'm talking about isn't one driven out of worry that your children might not grow up to have a strong relationship with God. This needs to be a desire driven out of the incredible potential your child has to be in communion with God and the fact that your child really is a gift from God.
And then to the last couple verses of the passage here, 51 and 52. Then he, meaning Jesus, went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart, and Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Now, this is probably just stupid. This is probably just what I read into that story in the Bible. We all read things into the Bible when we read it. When I picture Mary treasuring these things in her heart, I picture this otherworldly scene where she's like sitting in a chair next to a window, and there's beams of holy sunlight into the window shining on her face, and she's just blank staring off into heaven. And in the background, there's angels humming songs from K-Love. Just this super holy moment that she's in. And I think really what's happening here as I looked into it some more is just this normal parenting moment, or what should be maybe a normal parenting moment, where Mary just kind of slows down and she remembers how awesome her kid is. Those moments in life where we slow down and we remember when our kids were young. We remember when we first met our spouse and fell in love with them. We remember that vacation that we took as a family growing up. Those moments where we pause from the busyness and the activity of life to focus on what's really most important in life. Mary treasured these things in her heart. For me, one of those moments came just a few weeks ago. We went to the Omaha Children's Museum. And from the moment we got there, I kind of had this realization that as a dad, this is going to be the last time that I ever come here. We took our two youngest kids there. It was Star Wars night, of course, so that's when you go, right? And they had a great time. But just so many moments there, I wanted to say something to my wife, just have a normal conversation. But I was so nostalgic about our kids growing up and getting older that I'm like, if I start talking to Polly right now, I'm going to start crying in front of all these strangers, all right? And so I just was quiet the whole time. And I think what was happening in me is these moments of this mix of sadness and these great memories, and also thoughts of, how can I make the most of every moment of my life? How can I make my life about the things that matter most? Faith and faith in my family. And I wonder if that's what Mary was doing here, just slowing down for a minute from the busyness of life and going, I love my son. I'm so thankful for him. How am I doing at developing my faith? Am I passing on that faith to him really well? Do you ask yourself that? As a family, are you making your lives about the most important things, about faith and about family? Or are there other things that you've elevated that you know you've got to make some changes for? Do you have space in your life even? Do you have regular times where you can slow down and just reflect on how you're doing in life, just to say, am I making the most important things in my life? That's what Mary was doing here, I think. So we get to the end of this passage, and as you get there, you kind of look at Joseph and Mary and you say, whoops, you messed up really bad by leaving the 12-year-old Messiah in the biggest city around at the time. Probably not so good there, but you see so many things that they did super well in intentionally passing their faith on to that next generation. And so I wonder, how are you doing at intentionally developing your faith? And how are you doing at intentionally passing that faith on to people of the next generation? Part of what we wanted to do today for Student Takeover is we wanted to share some stories of how God is at work, changing lives, making a difference, discipling students in our church. And so we've got some students who are going to begin to make their way up here on the stage. And some of them are going to come up here with their journey groups who've been a big part of their life. Some are going to come up here with their families who've been a big part of their lives, or students in our church that they work with in CCC Kids that are younger with them. And our hope is that you hear these stories and that you go, wow, our God is an awesome God. And also that as you hear these stories that you go, wow, I think I can actually be a part of discipling this next generation here in our church. We're excited for you to hear some of these stories. Here we go.
My name is Keegan Johnson. I'm in 6th grade. My family has always taught me about the Lord, and after accepting God into my heart, I had always wanted to get baptized, but I had never been old enough. There are many parts of the Bible and God that I don't get, but my journey group leader Ethan has helped me understand a bit more. I have gone through tough times with my grandpa having cancer, but I feel like that has brought me even closer to God. I'm praying that God will give him hope and let him cherish these last few months.
I'm Haven, I'm a freshman, and I decided to volunteer with Girls Club because I remember when I was in Girls Club and my leaders meant so much to me. I believe it's really important for leaders to be there for the girls, make it a fun environment, and to be someone that they can trust and talk to. Because of Girls Club, I've become a better leader and problem solver. I think I've taught them about as much as they've taught me.
I'm Chloe and I'm a sophomore. I volunteer in Girls Club because it's such a fun environment where I feel like I can be a kid again and worship God in ways that I'm not used to. While I'm teaching the girls, I am learning new things myself. I am also proud to say that I now know what a Pick Me Pop is. If you don't know what that is, you should start volunteering as well.
Hello, my name is Manuel So, and I'm an 8th grade homeschooler. It has been a privilege to witness how God unfolded His plan in our lives at the Scripps National Spelling Bee. My faith has grown by experiencing how God fulfilled His promises for me and having the honor to give Him glory in the media. He has not only blessed our faith journey with miracles, favor, and support from the church, but He has also blessed over 200 spellers through our encouraging tracts that explain the gospel in a way specifically tailored for this group of students and families. Some parents and students thanked us for the message that had helped them deal with their disappointment. It's been an amazing opportunity to experience God working through us.
Hi, my name is Luke, and I am a 7th grader. I like bringing my friends to the dodgeball tournaments every year because the event is a lot of fun and my friends at school have a great time. Most of my friends came back this past year because they had so much fun the first year. I invited some of them to other events too. Some of my friends have been to the fall retreat and journey groups. CCC Middle School Ministry has great events to bring friends to, and the dodgeball tournament is one of my favorites. As long as they keep offering fun events, I'll keep inviting.
Hi, my name is Ashley Madsen, and I'm a junior in high school. I've been playing trumpet in the orchestra since middle school, and it's had a big impact on my life. I'm able to have a lot of great relationships with people my age and people older than me. The thing I love most about the orchestra is how it provides a way for me to give back. Music plays such a big role in my life, and I love being able to be a part of creating music for other people. There's also something powerful about being able to play worship songs with the orchestra for God's glory. It's a community I love being a part of and something I look forward to every week. I can't think of a more fitting way for me to be involved at CCC.
My name is Ethan, and I am a junior at Elkhorn High School. I was going to an engineering camp because that is what I always thought I would do for my career, but I felt that it was not for me. I looked towards people I admired and wanted to be like, such as Pastor Mark. Then with the help of my mom, I reached out to the church and talked with the high school pastor about my desires to understand ministry, and he told me to get involved in a few areas so I could explore. I jumped right in. I joined C4 and journey groups, and I've met many new people, learned about leadership, and I'm learning more about who God is. I definitely feel God calling me towards something new and different than I originally thought.
Hi, my name is Anna, and I'm a sophomore. I met my friend Lily at school. As I got to know her, I learned that she was a Christian but hadn't yet found a church home. I was really excited when she told me that she was interested in coming to student ministry. I have a welcoming journey group, and I knew they would make her feel right at home. She jumped in, went to fall retreat, and now our journey group is praying for us as Lily and I are on the lookout for friends at school that we can invite to student ministry. We have found a home here, and we want others to have the same community that we have.
I began my faith in a Christian home attending CCC for all my life. I first made the choice to ask Jesus into my heart at the tender age of 4. From then on, my faith stayed strong, until middle school came along. I began to stray from God's path, and I did some pretty bad stuff during those years. I even considered suicide in the middle of 8th grade. I was bottling up all of my emotions, not letting any sadness show, because I thought it was a sign of weakness. In fact, I felt angry and bitter for most of the day. This thought process followed me all the way until the start of freshman year, but then I went to the high school ministry fall retreat. I suddenly realized during one of the sermons that I had been running from God for years and He wanted me back. I made the decision to stop running for good and turn back to Him. This was the first time since the age of 4 that I recommitted my faith in Christ, and this time I actually knew what it meant. My journey group was so supportive of me, and they continue to grow me in my faith every time we meet. We challenge each other, and it's almost like a group of brothers. Ever since I took the step that day at fall retreat, I'm more expressive and I'm confident in my faith, and I'm ready for the next challenge that God presents for me. This time, I'm meeting my problems head on.
Check. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. CCC, I want you to know that these stories aren't just stories that happen isolated from you. These are your stories. And because I want you to see the impact that you're having in discipling the future generations, we're going to do a little activity. And here's how it's going to go. I'm going to say some things, and if they apply to you, I would like you to stand up. So here we go. Stand up if you're a student ministry journey group leader. Stand up if you serve somewhere in CCC alongside a student, orchestra, choir, CCC kids, other places. Stand up if you sit next to and interact with a student regularly in a worship service. Stand up if you're a parent or grandparent of someone college age or under that you're pouring your life into. Stand up if you've cheered and clapped as a student has gotten baptized recently here at CCC. Stand up if you've prayed for students of this next generation. Stand up if you've given towards the life-changing ministries here at CCC.
Guys, these are your stories. Do you believe that? These aren't just stories of something that happens across the parking lot over in the student center, but you are a part of what God is doing in passing faith on to the next generation. You guys can have a seat as we wrap up here. We wanted you to see and hear some of the stories just to be praising God, but also so that you can see what it looks like to be investing and being intentionally about pouring faith into the next generation. So that's the question, is how are you intentionally discipling the next generation? For some of you, maybe as a result of today, God is calling you to keep doing what you're already doing. For others of you, maybe God is calling you to move into a new area. Maybe it's serving as a journey group leader in our middle school or high school ministry, or working in our cafe or something like that. Others of you are just going to keep doing what you're doing, but be a little more intentional around the church as you do it. That student that sits close to you, you're going to begin to talk to them and get to know them and share your life with them a little bit. For others of you, that student you serve next to in one of the ministries here in our church, you're going to begin to build that relationship and pour into them a little more. For those of you who are parents and grandparents, maybe you're going to up your intentionality and you're going to walk away from today saying, you know what, in my life and in my family's life, faith in Jesus is going to be our new priority over everything else in our lives. I want to give you some time to think that through before we just send you out today. Like, how are you going to be intentional? In the backs of the seats in front of you are the cards that look just like this. And we've designed these in a way that feels pretty all-inclusive, that it's something on there that everybody can do, whether it seems big or small. And we're just going to give you a few moments to pray and say, God, how do you want me to invest in this next generation? And then as he leads, there's some of the stuff on the top is more like getting involved in our ministry. The stuff on the bottom is stuff that you can do without being involved in our ministry. We'd love you to pray, see where God leads you, fill that out, and then on your way out, we've got those black boxes that are there at the doors. You're going to slip that in there, all right? So we're just going to give you a few moments as Ryan continues to play just to say, God, how do you want me to invest in this next generation? And whatever he leads you, you kind of indicate on here. We'd love to know what God is going to do in and through you, okay? All right? Take a couple minutes as you do that. God, thank you so much for your word that gives us model and example of how to do life. Thank you for discipleship and the opportunity that we get to pass our faith on to the next generations. It's something that should be common for all of us, whether we've known Jesus for a day or for 50 years. But God, it's something that we often don't do. In the busyness of life, we forget to be intentional about passing it on. So would you help us to be people who step back and see the opportunity, that we would be bold to pass on what you've done in our lives to other people? Would that be something that our church is known for in our city and even around the world as a disciple-making church? God, we pray that you would empower your people who are here to do what you've called them to do in this area. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, hey, it's been great to be with you this morning. If you can push these in those boxes on the way out, and then if you want to play some ping pong as well in the atrium, you can do that, all right? Have a great week. You're dismissed.